What would you do if the people you trusted most became the architects of your downfall? In January 2013, Clint Harrington, a powerful oil magnate, was found dead in the grand hallway of his Highland Ridge mansion in Dallas, Texas. What initially seemed like a tragic accident soon unraveled into a chilling tale of betrayal, greed, and obsession. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered a twisted web connecting Clint's glamorous wife, Melissa, and their enigmatic neighbor, Jack Burnett. Stay with us as we uncover how a secret affair, a volatile New Year's Eve party, and a single gunshot shattered lives and exposed the darkest sides of human nature. Thank you for tuning in to True Crime by Sophia. If gripping real-life mysteries intrigue you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support allows us to bring you more captivating stories every day. Highland Ridge was the kind of neighborhood most people could only dream of living in. Located in Dallas, Texas, it was an enclave of sprawling mansions, manicured lawns, and high walls that promised privacy. The Harrington estate was the crown jewel of this affluent community, a 10,000-square-foot mansion with towering windows, marble floors, and a reputation for hosting the most extravagant parties. Clint Harrington had spent 2 decades building his empire in the oil industry, earning both admiration and resentment for his ruthless business acumen. He was a man who commanded respect, but his success came with a dark side. Clint was known to be controlling, especially with those closest to him. To his wife Melissa, he was both a provider and a captor, keeping her bound to a lifestyle that sparkled on the surface but felt hollow within. Melissa Harrington, 38, was the picture of grace and beauty. A former model, she had traded the spotlight for a life of luxury when she married Clint, but years of being treated as little more than a trophy had left her yearning for something deeper. Friends described her as warm and engaging, though they often noted a sadness behind her radiant smile. The Harringtons' world was turned upside down in the fall of 2012 when Jack Burnett moved into the neighborhood. In a community where everyone was established, Jack stood out. He was a newcomer with a mysterious past, rumored to have made his fortune in real estate. Jack's charm and enigmatic nature made him the subject of intrigue at Highland Ridge dinner parties, but his presence also sparked tension, especially with Clint. In late September 2012, Melissa met Jack at a neighborhood barbecue hosted by one of the Harringtons' closest friends. While Clint mingled with business associates, Melissa found herself drawn to Jack's magnetic personality. Unlike Clint, who often dismissed her opinions, Jack listened intently, hanging on her every word. His compliments, though subtle, made Melissa feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. Their encounters became more frequent. Jack jogged past the Harrington estate daily, often stopping to chat if Melissa was outside. He seemed to be everywhere, at the local market, the country club, and even a charity gala where he and Melissa were photographed together. By October, the two had begun meeting in secret. What started as harmless flirtation quickly escalated into a full-blown affair, but Jack's charm soon revealed a darker side. His attentiveness turned possessive. Melissa, torn between the intoxicating freedom Jack offered and the stability of her life with Clint, tried to pull back. Jack, however, wasn't willing to let her go. He began showing up uninvited, leaving cryptic messages and making veiled threats about exposing their relationship. Clint, though unaware of the affair, sensed a change in his wife. He grew more watchful, his temper shorter than usual. The tension in the Harrington household was palpable, and it set the stage for the explosive events of New Year's Eve. December 31, 2012, was meant to be a night of celebration. Clint's annual New Year's Eve party was a Highland Ridge tradition, a lavish affair, complete with a live jazz band, gourmet catering, and a fireworks display that could be seen for miles. Over 50 guests arrived in their finest attire, ready to toast to another year of success and opulence. Melissa played her role as hostess to perfection, but beneath her polished exterior, she was unraveling. She had begged Jack not to come to the party, knowing his presence would only escalate the tension. But Jack had his own plans. Dressed impeccably and exuding confidence, he arrived uninvited, mingling with the crowd as if he belonged. Clint noticed Jack almost immediately. Guests later described how Clint's demeanor shifted as the night wore on. He was no longer the charming host, but a man simmering with barely concealed anger. By 11:30 p.m., the tension reached a breaking point. Witnesses saw Clint, Jack, and Melissa disappear into the study, where raised voices could be heard through the heavy oak doors. When the three emerged, the atmosphere had changed. Clint was visibly enraged, Melissa looked on the verge of tears, and Jack wore an infuriatingly smug expression. Guests whispered among themselves, speculating about what might have transpired. As the clock approached midnight, Melissa and Clint were last seen near the grand hallway. Their argument was intense, their body language unmistakably confrontational. Jack, standing nearby, seemed to be watching intently. Then, as fireworks erupted outside, a single gunshot shattered the celebration. The guests froze, their joyous cheers replaced by stunned silence. Melissa stumbled into the living room moments later, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Clint's been shot," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant crackle of fireworks. When first responders arrived, they found Clint lying in the grand hallway, his tuxedo soaked in blood. The silver revolver lay nearby, its polished surface reflecting the flickering chandelier light. The scene spoke of a struggle over turned furniture, shattered glass, and scuff marks on the marble floor. Melissa, still in her evening gown, was inconsolable, but her frantic explanations that the gun had gone off accidentally during an argument raised more questions than answers. And standing quietly in the corner, observing everything, was Jack Burnett. Detectives Carla Ramos and her team were tasked with unraveling the mystery. What initially appeared to be a tragic accident would soon reveal itself to be a tangled web of lies, manipulation, and deadly intention. By the early hours of January 1, 2013, the Harrington estate had transformed from a scene of celebration to a crime scene. As partygoers were questioned and forensics combed through the house, detectives began piecing together the fragmented timeline of Clint Harrington's final hour. Melissa Harrington was taken to the police station for initial questioning, dressed in her now creased evening gown, with mascara streaked down her cheeks. She appeared the picture of devastation. Her story was simple yet unconvincing. She claimed Clint had been angry, accusing her of embarrassing him at the party. During their argument, the Guna weapon Clint kept for protection was accidentally discharged. Detective Carla Ramos, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts, was skeptical. The evidence didn't quite align with Melissa's version of events. The bruises found on Clint's arms during the autopsy hinted at a physical struggle, while the position of the gunshot suggested it wasn't accidental. More troubling, a partial fingerprint belonging to Jack Burnett was found on the revolver. When questioned, Jack was calm but evasive. He admitted to being in the house when the shooting occurred, but denied any involvement. "I heard the shot and ran toward the commotion," he claimed. His partial print on the gun, he insisted, must have been from an earlier encounter, though he couldn't recall exactly when. Clues begin to surface. By January 2, 2013, detectives had collected witness statements and reviewed surveillance footage from the Harrington estate. The footage revealed a chilling sequence of events. At 11:45 p.m., Clint and Jack were seen arguing on the back patio. Their gestures were animated, with Clint pointing angrily at Melissa. Appeared moments later, her movements hurried as she seemed to plead with the two men. All three re-entered the house at 11:52 p.m. It was the last time Clint was seen alive. Further digging revealed cracks in the Harringtons' seemingly perfect marriage. Melissa's best friend, Sandra Taylor, reluctantly came forward with shocking revelation. Weeks before the New Year's Eve party, Melissa had confided in her about her affair with Jack. According to Sandra, Melissa was deeply unhappy in her marriage, describing Clint as controlling and dismissive. She had wanted to leave him but feared the financial consequences. Sandra also revealed Jack's increasingly erratic behavior. Melissa had mentioned that Jack was becoming possessive and had made veiled threats when she tried to create distance. "She told me she felt trapped," Sandra admitted. "But I didn't think it would come to this." On January 5, 2013, an anonymous letter arrived at the Dallas Police Department. Typed and devoid of identifying marks, it accused Melissa of orchestrating Clint's murder. The letter claimed she had manipulated both Clint and Jack, using her affair as leverage to provoke a confrontation. It suggested that Clint's murder was financially motivated, pointing to a recent change in his will that left his entire estate to Melissa. Detectives quickly confirmed the timing of the will's amendment, which coincided with Melissa's threats to leave Clint. The revelation cast Melissa in a new light, not as a grieving widow, but as a woman with everything to gain from her husband's death. Melissa's subsequent interviews with detectives only deepened their suspicions. She contradicted herself repeatedly, at times claiming she didn't witness the argument between Clint and Jack, and at other times admitting she had tried to intervene. Her emotional outbursts felt rehearsed, as if she were performing rather than mourning. Adding to the mystery were Melissa's actions during the party. Witnesses reported that she had disappeared for long stretches, her whereabouts unaccounted for. One guest even noted seeing her slip out the side door with Jack shortly before the gunshot rang out. Forensic evidence added another layer to the case. Gunpowder residue was found on Melissa's hands, suggesting she had been closer to the weapon than she admitted. And while Melissa claimed to have wrestled the gun from Clint to prevent him from using it, the trajectory of the bullet suggested otherwise. The investigation took a dramatic turn on January 15, 2013, when Jack Burnett confessed to being present during the shooting. His account was reluctant and fragmented, but it painted a damning picture of Melissa. According to Jack, Clint had confronted him about the affair during the party. Melissa had tried to mediate, but the argument escalated. Jack claimed that Melissa, in a fit of rage, grabbed the revolver and shot Clint during the confrontation. "I didn't think she'd do it," Jack said, "but she just snapped." His confession, while implicating Melissa, also raised questions about his own involvement. Why had he stayed silent for so long? And why had his fingerprint been on the gun? By January 20, 2013, detectives had pieced together a chilling theory. They believed Melissa had orchestrated the events of New Year's Eve to provoke a confrontation between Clint and Jack, knowing the situation could spiral out of control. Whether she had planned to pull the trigger herself or manipulate Jack into doing it was unclear. As the evidence mounted, Melissa Harrington was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Jack Burnett was charged as an accessory, his confession doing little to absolve him of suspicion. The scandal rocked Highland Ridge. Neighbors, who had once admired the Harringtons' wealth and glamour, now whispered about the darkness that had lurked behind their gilded doors. The once idyllic neighborhood became a media circus, with reporters camping outside the gates and speculating about the trial. Melissa's arrest marked only the beginning of a legal battle that would captivate the nation and leave no doubt that the truth was far more twisted than anyone could have imagined. On March 5, 2013, Melissa Harrington's trial began, drawing a packed courtroom and widespread media attention. The prosecution wasted no time painting Melissa as a manipulative woman who had meticulously planned her husband's death to escape an unhappy marriage and claim his fortune. The anonymous letter, Clint's updated will, and Melissa's affair with Jack Burnett formed the backbone of their case. The prosecution opened with a powerful statement. Behind the glamour of Highland Ridge lay a marriage crumbling under the weight of betrayal, greed, and manipulation. Melissa Harrington wasn't just an unhappy wife, she was a woman willing to kill to get what she wanted. Melissa's defense team took a different approach, portraying her as a victim of years of emotional abuse. They argued that Clint's controlling nature had pushed her into the arms of another man, and that the events of New Year's Eve were a tragic accident. To support their case, the defense highlighted Clint's bruises from the autopsy, suggesting that Melissa had acted in self-defense during a violent altercation. They painted Jack Burnett as an opportunistic manipulator who had inserted himself into Melissa's life at her most vulnerable. Halfway through the trial, the prosecution introduced a bombshell piece of evidence: a voicemail Clint had left for Sandra Taylor just hours before the party. In the voicemail, Clint's voice was calm but filled with urgency. "Sandra, I need to talk to you. Jack Burnett has been poisoning Melissa's mind. He's dangerous, and I'm worried about what he's capable of. If anything happens tonight, I need you to remember this." The voicemail cast Clint in a sympathetic light, a man trying to protect his wife and salvage his marriage. It also raised questions about Sandra's role in the events leading up to Clint's death. When Sandra took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. Her testimony was expected to be pivotal, and she didn't disappoint. Sandra admitted that Melissa had confided in her about the affair and her desire to leave Clint. She also confessed to telling Clint about the affair, hoping it would force Melissa to end things with Jack. "I thought I was helping her," Sandra said tearfully. "I didn't know it would lead to this." The defense pounced on Sandra's admission, suggesting that her betrayal had pushed Melissa into an emotionally volatile state. But the prosecution countered, arguing that Sandra's actions, while misguided, didn't absolve Melissa of her own choices. When Jack was called to testify, his demeanor was cool but guarded. Under direct questioning, he admitted to his affair with Melissa and to being present during the argument with Clint. However, he vehemently denied pulling the trigger. "Melissa and Clint were fighting," Jack said. "I tried to step in, but she grabbed the gun before I could stop her. I didn't think she'd actually do." The prosecution used Jack's testimony to bolster their narrative that Melissa was the mastermind, but the defense pointed out inconsistencies in Jack's story, suggesting he had more involvement than he was letting on. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was the timing of Clint's updated will. The prosecution argued that Melissa had manipulated Clint into changing it shortly before his death, ensuring she would inherit his vast fortune. Forensic accountants testified that Clint's estate was worth over $20 million, much of which would have been inaccessible to Melissa in the event of a divorce. This financial windfall, the prosecution argued, was her primary motive. Melissa took the stand in her own defense, a risky move that could make or break her case. She appeared composed, though her voice wavered as she recounted the events of New Year's Eve. According to Melissa, Clint had grown increasingly paranoid and confrontational in the weeks leading up to the party. She claimed that on the night of his death, he had been drinking heavily and became enraged when he saw Jack at the party. "He accused me of humiliating him," Melissa said, her voice cracking. "He grabbed the gun, and I was terrified he was going to hurt someone. I tried to stop him, but it all happened so fast." Under cross-examination, the prosecution pressed Melissa on her inconsistent statements to police and her failure to mention key details until the trial. They also highlighted her affair with Jack, painting it as part of a calculated plan to provoke Clint. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 2 days. On March 27, 2013, they returned with a verdict. Melissa Harrington was found guilty of second-degree murder. Jack Burnett, whose trial followed shortly after, was convicted as an accessory and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Melissa received a 25-year prison sentence. As the judge read the sentence, she showed little emotion, her once glamorous facade replaced by a stoic resignation. Highland Ridge was forever changed by the scandal. Neighbors who had once admired the Harringtons' wealth and status now viewed them as a cautionary tale. Sandra Taylor became a social pariah, her betrayal of Melissa casting a long shadow over her reputation. Jack Burnett's enigmatic charm was gone, replaced by the image of a man whose actions had contributed to a deadly chain of events. And Melissa, once the queen of Highland Ridge, now faced decades behind bars, her life irreparably shattered. While the trial provided answers, it also left lingering questions. Was Melissa truly the mastermind, or was she a victim of circumstance and manipulation? Did Jack play a larger role than he admitted? And what would have happened if Sandra had stayed silent about the affair? One thing was certain: the glittering facade of Highland Ridge had been forever tarnished, and the lives entangled in Clint Harrington's death would never be the same. Despite the court's verdict, the truth about Clint Harrington's death remains a source of debate. Was Melissa a cold-blooded murderer, a victim of circumstance, or something in between? Did Jack's influence push her to the edge, or was he merely a scapegoat for her own action? One thing is certain: the events of that fateful New Year's Eve left a mark not just on those directly involved, but on an entire community. Highland Ridge, once a symbol of wealth and success, now serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that behind every glittering facade lies the potential for darkness. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to True Crime by Sophia for more gripping stories. Stay tuned for our next case, where we uncover another tale of love, betrayal, and tragedy.